Over the weekend, I was walking through the park near my home in Chicago when I spotted the striped cat sitting on a bench. It looked lost, but there was something familiar about it. Then I remembered the missing posters I had seen all around the neighborhood, promising a $500 reward for a safe return. I thought, well, maybe this is my chance to do some good and also collect what was offered. So I picked the cat up, carried it home, and called the number on the poster. The owner showed up pretty quickly, almost running up to my place, clearly desperate to get his pet back. I walked downstairs with the cat in my arms, ready to hand it over and get the promised reward. But when he saw me, he suddenly changed his tune. He looked at me, then at the cat, and said the money was just bait to make people look harder, that he never really intended to pay. He even had the nerve to smirk, like he thought it was all some kind of clever trick. At that moment, something snapped in me. I mean, it wasn't about the $500 alone, it was about respect, about keeping your word. He lied to the entire neighborhood, exploiting people's empathy for his own convenience. So I told him straight up, if you don't keep your promise, you're not getting the cat. He got red in the face, started shouting about how I was cruel, how his cat was basically being held hostage. But I just stood there and said, you made a deal with anyone who found your pet, and you don't get to back out now. To be honest, it did feel a little like a hostage situation. I was holding on to this living, breathing animal while a grown man tried to wriggle out of his own lie. He kept insisting that he was panicked when he made the posters, that he just wanted his cat back, that 500 was too much for something like this. But I couldn't let it go. I told him that when you make a promise like that, it's binding, at least morally, if not legally. He stormed off eventually, muttering curses and threats, and I was left standing there with his cat in my arms, wondering whether I had just done the right thing or crossed some invisible line. And then there's the family drama. Around the same time, my brother's life took a turn I didn't expect. He had been dating this woman for a while, someone I never fully trusted, and sure enough, things started to unravel. He asked me to help run a background check, something I can do through a couple of friends who work in private security. What came back was shocking. She had a child she never mentioned, a child from a previous relationship, completely hidden from my brother. When I showed him the proof, he was crushed. It wasn't just about the child, it was about the deception, the idea that someone could be building a life with you while keeping something so big under wraps. He started questioning everything about their relationship. Was she planning to eventually reveal the truth? Was she using him? Or was she simply too ashamed or too scared to admit it? I told him the same thing I had told the cat's owner. Lies rot trust from the inside out. Whether it's a fake promise about money or a hidden child, deceit eats away at the very foundation of a relationship. My brother didn't want to hear it at first. He was in love, clinging to the idea that maybe she had a reason, maybe she was waiting for the right moment. But the more we talked, the more he realized that there's no right moment to tell the truth too late. And maybe that's the theme of my life lately. People think they can lie, cut corners, or manipulate others just to get what they want. But every time they do, they drag someone else into their mess. That owner thought he could trick the whole neighborhood into finding his cat for free. That woman thought she could start a new life while burying her old one in silence. And me? I guess I've become the guy who calls it out, even if it makes me look like the asshole. Because here's the truth. If you can't be honest about something as simple as paying a reward or admitting you have a child, then you don't deserve the trust you're trying to buy. And if standing my ground makes me the villain, then maybe that just says more about the world we're living in than it does about me. My brother's heartbreak wasn't even the end of the storm. It was like life decided to throw one curveball after another, and somehow I kept ending up in the middle of it all. You'd think a family could handle its issues quietly, but in ours, everything always finds a way to explode. Not long after the whole mess with his girlfriend and the secret child, I found myself dealing with another ridiculous situation. My sister invited some of her friends over to stay at her place. I didn't think much of it. She's always been the hostess type, the one who opens her doors and acts like she's running a bed and breakfast. But this time it wasn't just a night or two. These people came with suitcases like they were moving in. At first, I tried to let it go. I mean, everyone deserves a little kindness, right? But then the bathroom war began. I'm not exaggerating. These people treated the bathroom like it was their private spa. I'd get up in the morning, needing 5 minutes to shower before work, and the door would be locked. I'd wait 20 minutes, 30, sometimes a full hour. By the time I finally got in, it looked like a steam room. Towels thrown everywhere, hair clogging the drain, and God help me, the smell of half a dozen different beauty products hitting me all at once. I told my sister this couldn't continue. She just waved me off, saying, "They're guests, relax." Guests? Guests don't take over your house like it's theirs. Guests don't leave you brushing your teeth in the kitchen sink because you can't even reach the bathroom in your own home. I tried to compromise. I suggested setting a schedule, limiting bathroom use in the mornings. They laughed, literally laughed in my face, as if I was the crazy one. The breaking point came one night when I had food poisoning. I was desperate, sick to my stomach, and the bathroom was locked for almost an hour. I was banging on the door, begging, and all I heard was giggling on the other side. That was it for me. I threw them out the next morning, packed their bags myself, and told them to go find a hotel if they needed a spa so badly. My sister called me cruel, said I embarrassed her in front of her friends. But what was I supposed to do? Sacrifice my own health, my own sanity, so she could play cool host? And while I was still fuming over that, another storm hit me, this time from the outside world. Surfing lessons. Yeah, you heard me right. I thought taking up surfing would be a good distraction, a chance to clear my head, spend time at the beach, feel like I was doing something new instead of drowning in family drama. So I signed up for classes. First day, everything seemed fine. The instructor was cool, the ocean was calm, and I thought, maybe this is exactly what I need. But then there was this guy in the group who, as it turned out, couldn't even swim. Who signs up for surfing lessons without knowing how to swim? He went out there, board strapped to his ankle, paddling like a kid who had never been in the deep end of a pool. At first, everyone thought it was funny. But then he panicked. One wave hit him, not even a big one, and he froze. He started thrashing, shouting for help. The instructor had to dive in and drag him out, while the rest of us watched in shock. I was angry not just at him but at the whole setup. He risked everyone's safety. If the instructor hadn't been right there, if someone else had jumped in to help, they could have been dragged under too. Afterward, he laughed it off, said he wanted to learn the hard way. The hard way? That's not just reckless, it's suicidal. And again, it made me think about lies, about hidden truths. He lied by omission. He didn't admit he couldn't swim. He thought he could just wing it, bluff his way through, and no one would notice until it was too late. Just like my sister's guests pretending to be just visiting, while acting like tenants. Just like my brother's girlfriend hiding an entire child. Maybe that's the thread tying all of these disasters together. People pretending. Pretending to be honest, pretending to be capable, pretending to be decent guests. And me? I'm always the guy forced to clean up the wreckage, the guy who looks like the asshole because I'm the one who says enough. But tell me this, is it really so wrong to demand honesty? To say, you can't stay here if you abuse my space? To tell a guy, don't throw yourself into the ocean if you can't swim? If being the one who finally pulls the brakes makes me the bad guy, then maybe the world's standards are screwed up, not mine. You know, by the time the whole surfing fiasco ended, I thought I'd finally get a break. But no, life doesn't hand me peace that easily. It seems like every time one fire dies out, another starts burning right in front of me. And this time it wasn't strangers or outsiders. It was my own family again. It started with my cousin. He'd always been a little reckless, but I never thought he'd drag me into his nonsense. He asked me for a small favor. That's how he put it. Just a small favor. Could I lend him some money? Nothing crazy, just a few $1,000s. He said it was temporary, just until he got paid. Now, I don't like mixing family and money, but he swore it was urgent. He looked me in the eye and said, "I'll pay you back next month, I promise." And like a fool, I believed him. A month went by. No repayment. I asked him about it, and suddenly the story changed. He said he was having cash flow problems. Another month went by, same excuses. Finally, I pushed harder and he cracked. The truth came out. He hadn't needed the money for bills, like he claimed. He used it to gamble. Blackjack, roulette, some shady poker games in the back of a bar. He thought he could double it and pay me back with the winnings. But he lost everything. That was the moment I realized he hadn't just lied. He had gambled with my trust. He didn't just lose his own money. He risked mine without my consent. I cut him off. Told him he could figure out his own mess. And of course, the rest of the family said I was being too harsh. "It's just money," they said. "Family comes first." But what they didn't understand is that trust doesn't come back once it's been broken like that. Around the same time, my job threw another nightmare at me. I work with a team that's supposed to handle sensitive information, confidential reports, financial records, things that aren't supposed to leave the office. And yet, somehow, someone on my team decided it was fine to leak documents. Not to the press, not to the cops, but to a competitor. Imagine that, one of our own selling us out for a quick buck. We discovered it by accident, when one of our clients confronted us with details that only an insider could have known. My boss went ballistic. There were audits, investigations, endless meetings, and through it all I kept wondering, how do you sit across from your coworkers every day, pretend to be loyal, while you're stabbing them in the back? How do you look people in the eye knowing you're selling their hard work to the highest bidder? And yet, the most surreal betrayal came from someone I least expected. An old friend. We'd grown up together, shared secrets, shared dreams. We trusted each other like brothers. And then one night, over drinks, he let something slip. He admitted he'd been seeing my ex-girlfriend behind my back when we were still dating. Years ago. He laughed about it. Said it wasn't a big deal since it was so long ago. I sat there, drink in hand, trying to keep my face neutral, but inside I was boiling. He'd kept that lie buried for years, and in one careless moment, he ripped the scab off. It wasn't about the girl anymore. It was about the deception, about the fact that he could smile in my face all this time while hiding that knife in my back. And it made me think again. How many people in our lives are masks? How many are playing roles, pretending to be friends, partners, family, when in reality they're opportunists waiting for the moment to serve themselves? The gambling cousin, the leaking coworker, the two-faced friend. They all reminded me of one simple truth. Honesty is rare, rarer than gold. And the few people who are honest with you, those are the ones worth protecting, worth keeping. But the rest, the liars, the pretenders, they don't deserve a second chance. By then, I'd started to notice a pattern in myself too. Every time someone lied to me, I got harsher, less forgiving, like I was building armor out of every betrayal. My brother's heartbreak, my sister's selfishness, the fake reward poster, the surfing fraud. All of it stacked up until I wasn't the same person anymore. I wasn't naive, I wasn't hopeful. I was hardening. And maybe that's what people saw in me when they called me cold, or cruel, or unforgiving. But let me tell you this. Cruelty is lying to someone's face while you smile. Cruelty is using people for your gain. Cruelty is betrayal, not truth. And if they can't see the difference, maybe it's because they've grown too comfortable in a world full of lies. By the time the truth about my old friend came out, I was already worn down. You'd think after so many betrayals I'd be numb to it. But no, it cuts every time. Maybe differently, maybe deeper, but it always leaves another scar. And just when I thought I'd seen it all, My own parents managed to shake my world in ways I didn't see coming. Started small. A conversation at dinner, my father casually dropping comments about money, inheritance, the future. I didn't pay much attention at first, but the more I listened, the more I realized something was off. He wasn't talking about family security, he was talking about control, about using money as a leash, about deciding who deserved what based on loyalty to him. My mother just nodded along, as if it was normal. Then one night I stumbled on some documents in their study, papers they hadn't meant for me to see. Bank statements, property deeds, hidden accounts. My father had been quietly moving assets for years, not to protect the family, but to pit us against each other, to make sure we'd fight for his approval long after he was gone. Imagine that, your own father setting up a game where his children would be enemies, competing for scraps. Also, his presence lingered like a shadow even from the grave. When I confronted him, he didn't even deny it. He smiled, poured himself a drink, and said, "That's how you make sure the family stays strong. If you hand things out equally, they'll grow lazy. But if you make them fight, they'll stay sharp." Do you know what that feels like? To realize your father never saw you as a son, but as a piece in his twisted chess game. It shattered something in me. I walked out that night, and I don't know if I'll ever forgive him. As if that wasn't enough, my mother added her own knife to the collection. I trusted her more, always thought she was softer, more human than him. But one evening, I came home early and overheard her on the phone. She wasn't just chatting with a friend. She was talking about me, about my failures, my mistakes, about how she worried I'd never live up to the family name. She painted me as weak, irresponsible, even pathetic. The words cut deeper than anything I'd ever heard, because they weren't from a stranger. They were from the woman who raised me. I wanted to storm into the room, scream, demand answers. But instead, I froze. I listened. I let every word sink in. And then I walked away, quiet, carrying a truth that weighed heavier than any betrayal from friends or lovers. Because when it comes from your own blood, it's not just betrayal, it's demolition. After that, I started keeping secrets of my own. Not lies, just silence. I stopped telling them where I went, who I saw, what I did. I stopped letting them in. If they wanted me to be the villain in their stories, fine. I'd give them distance, walls, locked doors. But here's the strange thing. With all those walls, I began to see patterns more clearly. Lies weren't random anymore. They were strategies, weapons, survival tactics. My father used deception like a ruler. My mother used it like a shield. My cousin used it like a gamble, my friend like a disguise. Everyone had their own version of the same poison, and I was the one forced to drink it over and over. And maybe that's when the shift happened. That was the moment I stopped just reacting and started playing my own game. I realized if the world was a chessboard, then maybe I wasn't just a pawn. Maybe I could be the one moving the pieces. So I started watching more carefully. Not just what people said, but how they said it. The way their eyes flickered when they lied. The nervous laugh. The too perfect smile. I collected those details like ammunition. And while everyone thought I was growing distant, colder, more detached, what I was really doing was preparing. Because here's the truth. I wasn't going to let their lies keep cutting me forever. One day, I'd use everything I'd learned to turn the tables. I didn't know when, I didn't know how, but I knew it was coming. And when it did, they'd finally see what it feels like when the liar gets outplayed by someone who refuses to close his eyes anymore. By the time everything came full circle, I wasn't the same person anymore. Too many lies, too many knives in the back. But this time, I didn't just sit there waiting to be cut again. I had learned. I had prepared. And when the final betrayals came, I met them head-on. It started when an old enemy reappeared, someone I thought I'd left behind years ago. We had crossed paths during a darker chapter of my life. A man who thrived on chaos, who fed on fear. I knew the look in his eyes the moment I saw him again. He hadn't come for closure. He came for destruction. At the same time, my family spiraled further into their own games. My father was still tightening his strings, moving his pieces on the board, while my mother played the victim in her own script. They thought I was just another piece to be moved, another character in their drama. What they didn't realize was that I had stopped playing by their rules a long time ago. I had weapons they didn't know about, not guns, not fists, but knowledge. Every betrayal I'd endured had taught me something. My cousin's gambling taught me how desperation smells. My coworkers' leaks taught me how greed hides in plain sight. My so-called friend's confession taught me how arrogance slips out when you least expect it. And my parents, they taught me how lies are passed down like inheritance, dressed up as wisdom. So I flipped the board. Quietly, carefully, I started planting seeds of doubt in their stories, letting their own lies trip them up. I didn't scream, I didn't confront. I let silence do the work. A pause here, a raised eyebrow there, a question timed just right. And slowly, I watched as the web they spun around me started tangling around them instead. And when my old enemy tried to pull me into his chaos, I didn't fight fire with fire. I let him believe I was still the same, still naive, still easy to manipulate. But behind the mask, I was already 3 steps ahead. Every move he made, I countered before he even realized. Until finally, when he thought he had me cornered, he looked around and realized he was the one standing in the trap. People say revenge is sweet. Maybe it is. But for me, it wasn't about revenge, it was about clarity. About proving that I wasn't blind anymore. That I could see through the masks, the fake smiles, the poisoned promises. That I could stand in the middle of their lies and not drown in them. When it was over, when the dust settled, I wasn't triumphant. I wasn't celebrating. I just felt free. Free from their games, free from their weight, free from the constant doubt of wondering who would betray me next. And maybe that's the greatest lesson of all. Lies don't end when you expose them. They end when you stop letting them define you. When you stop living like a victim and start living like someone who knows the truth, even if the truth is ugly. So if you're asking me what it all meant, my brother's heartbreak, my sister's selfishness, the fake reward posters, the stolen surfboards, the gambling debts, the leaking coworkers, the two-faced friends, the poisoned words of parents, the enemy who returned for one last game. It meant this: I'm not afraid of lies anymore. I've lived through enough of them to know that every mask eventually cracks. And when it does, I'll be there, not as the pawn they thought I was, but as the player who finally sees the whole board.